Introducing our new series of intimate in-person trading conferences in some of the greatest cities in America. It's Market Rebellion Live. Next up, this June in Sonoma County, California. Savor some of the finest wines in America while you level up your trading with Pete Najarian, John Najarian, AJ Monty, Ryan Mastro, and Bill Johnson. Sonoma is limited to just 25 seats to ensure every guest gets personal attention, so act now. Tickets are going fast.
Still haven't found that damn clapper.
I don't know how a guy can have 8 or 10 clappers and now he can't find one.
You want me to search for it?
No. We got stuff to do, man. We got a big day in front of us here with the markets flying on one side and flying the opposite way in the other side. The Dow's getting slammed, but the NASDAQ is ripping today again.
Fly, Eagles, fly.
Eagles, fly. Yeah, well, we'll see. It's a long ways to Tipperillo.
Yeah, it is. But it's still 1.5, Pete. And I still think it should be 3 and a hook. But We'll talk about that in sports, I guess.
Sure.
Let's talk macro minute, Pete. We got Jerome Powell, as usual. As soon as he stopped talking, the market turned around and rallied. You could plot it. It looked like this, folks. Jerome Powell talking, Jerome Powell finishes, market. That's it.
That's pretty close. Well, here's what I'll say for my macro minute, John, with 2 things. 1, volatility index at 52-week lows, trading right at 17. We're a little off of that now, but we hit right around 17 today. And the dash for trash continues, and you'll find out a little bit more as we look at some of the various topics that we're going to cover today as far as the market ticks.
That's right. That's the macro minute, folks.
You
want, a full 50 minutes of macro, I could direct you to a channel that gives you exactly that.
Where would that be?
They may have just finished broadcasting, in fact. But Pete, let's talk about Meta. First, we want to start off, folks, with a video, because on November 9th, Pete and I were discussing Meta. And at that time, we both had some interesting opinions that I'd like you to hear. And by the way, the stock was 105 on November 9th.
101.
101. Let's get started, Pete, with Meta, because we both said all Zuck had to do was cut back on CapEx and this thing would be up 10% in a week. Well, I guess we underestimated it, Pete, because it was almost up 10% today when he announced cutting 13% of the workforce and keeping a hiring freeze through the first quarter of next year. What's your take? Would you give it a shot again to trade to the upside further?
Well, I can tell you this, John. We did see some call buying right out of the gate today in Facebook, and that was sort of something interesting. That's a little freebie unusual right there. But I think that the interesting part is, John, to your point, he did what people said that he needed to do for quite some time. He needs to pull back a little bit from what they're doing and sort of reallocate and redecide on what they need to really be doing. He said that I got this wrong. He couldn't be more right on that statement. He did get it wrong. He's been focused on Meta. He's not looking at Facebook. He's not looking at all the products that actually are funding everything that he's spending at Meta. And that's been the big problem. They changed the name. Big deal. It still isn't about Meta. When's Meta going to start making a money, John? It almost is like an Uber call, so to speak. But the regular business itself is there. They're cranking. They continue to crank. They have slowed down, but that's still what's drawing them in. It's where the money is. You look at the fundamentals of the company. It is extremely a fundamentally sound company with great cash flow, all of that to be true. So, yeah, I think it actually could, sustain a little bit more to the upside, John. But people still got to know, how much more money are you putting into Meta?
We're back. So that's what we said then, Pete.
Mhm.
And I think it was pretty damned accurate. And as you said, the stock was not 105, it was 101
Mhm.
when we said that. Today it's $192 a share. And in fact, Pete, it's up somewhat, $26 or something today.
Unbelievable run.
No, $40. What am I
Yep.
saying? $40. Multiply 40 times 2.2 billion shares, and you get the idea that they doubled the amount of money into the company market cap that they announced the buyback of 40 billion. They could make it 80, Pete, because that's how much the stock's up today.
And that was one of the big reasons why it was jumping the way it was, John. I think when you look through the numbers, you go through the numbers. One of the things, of course, is they talked about efficiency, right? I mean, we already talked about the jobs before back in November and what they were going to be having to do to make sure that we were convinced. And you and I were definitely convinced they were on track to do the right thing. They did the right thing. Year to date, the stock went from 121 all the way up to today. You were talking about 192. That's a pretty incredible run. Fundamentally also, John, even with this run, when you look at what the PE is for this company, what the free cash flow looks like, what the debt and what the cash looks like, the company is absolutely crushing it. And they even beat the numbers on the daily active users. They got to 2 billion. And it's just an amazing thing in what they've been able to accomplish. I love the balance sheet. They've done a great job. Oh, by the way, a Bank of America analyst really went out on a limb and decided to upgrade it today. Oh, that's just freaking great. Where were you yesterday, the day before? I mean, honestly, you wait until you get the number. That to me is ridiculous. But we see that all the time in the markets, John, where they wait, and that's not what you have to do. If you want to be a part of these kind of moves, you've got to make those decisions about what they're doing and how they're doing it. You and I talked about that in November, and bang, here we are.
Yep. You have to be able to put it on the line every once in a while, Pete.
Yeah.
And the nice thing is, folks, when Pete and I do that, we're doing it with an option that we have defined the risk when we buy that option. Now, some people will never buy an option, Pete. You and I know who they are, but they will just sell a put. They won't ever buy, but they'll sell a put. So to all of you who sold the 100 put or the 90 put, congratulations, you got a couple bucks. You missed about 90 bucks of upside, but congratulations. By being so penny wise and dollar foolish, you got more or less what you deserve.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Pete, we've got to go through the rest of these because we got a stacked roster today.
Mm-hmm.
Canada Goose Holdings. I know this is one that you've talked about a lot. It's down hard today. They cut forecasts. They said a spike in COVID in China. Who could have seen that coming? Was cutting down on their store traffic. Yeah, fun. Because when I think China, Pete, I think lots of people walking around in Canada Goose jackets.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking too. Well, they faced a lot of things, John. I mean, obviously you brought up the Chinese side. I'd also bring up the side of inflation itself, that being a bit of an issue that they faced. But to your point, when somebody does have a forecast like they had, you are going to see people run for the doors. And that's exactly what we're seeing today as the stock is getting slammed. Last I looked, I think it was down 21%, John. So it is getting hit pretty hard, deservedly so. Interesting company, but right now is a difficult time. Have they bottomed? Maybe. I mean, the Chinese are in a much different spot now than they were still in December. So I think that changes. And we are seeing inflation start to calm, at least to some degree. And so with that, I think that maybe we are looking at an opportunity potentially. That's what the CEO was trying to convey today when they were actually giving up on the earnings themselves. That's what they were trying to convey to us. And I think that it is a possibility that maybe today we're looking at some bottoms here for Goose.
Yeah. And, this is another case just like Caterpillar yesterday, Pete, where their inputs are going up like crazy because those geese are not giving it up easy.
I'm not touching that, Jared. Not touching that.
Next, Align. So Visalign is what these guys do. Align Technology, sharply higher today, up as much as 30% at one point. the maker of those clear orthodontics trays that you put in that hold your teeth, straighten your teeth, and so forth. It's a pretty interesting business. And this one was hit pretty darn hard, but they came out with full year revenue. Even though it slipped 5.5%, it definitely beat what the street estimates were, Pete.
Yeah, the estimates were really low, John. So it was an easy bar for them to get over. And they did. And I mean, to their credit, they actually still did get over it. It's interesting because here's a stock that was 212 at the start of this year. Today it hit 368. I mean, that's a pretty amazing run in the first, call it, month and a day or two into the new year. But I think what really sort of got people at least pretty excited about this stock, John, the $1 billion buyback. I mean, I think when we look at what Facebook or Meta really got everybody wound up, it was the 40 billion. This is a much smaller company, much different company, but the $1 billion that really is something that I think people looked at and said, well, these guys are confident enough. We're going to jump in with them. And that stock is just ripping today to the upside.
Yep. And trading about 3 million shares halfway through the session, folks. Mm-hmm. The normal volume is 1 million shares. So yeah, exactly as Pete said, the fact that this stock's up $80 today, that'll scare some people off from selling straddles or strangles, Pete, because right about now that strangle is feeling like that.
It's a strangle.
Now let's talk about Carvana. We danced on the grave of this one all the way down. But in fairness, when it got down to be super, super cheap, Pete, we also said, you know what? There's really not a lot further for this darn thing to fall to, because Carvana, the vending machine of cars, but they also, just like Vroom, will deliver the car to you and so forth. They traded all the way down, Pete, under $4. And at those levels, I know you and I were saying, you know what? This is a little too cheap, maybe. We had call buying in this one, Pete, when the stock was $9 recently. There it is on the screen there. Thank you, Jared. Call buying in there. The stock was under 10, and they were buying the at the money 10 calls that expire Friday, tomorrow. How they doing, Pete, with Carvana moving all the way up basically today to $19.88.
It's unbelievable, John, but this is exactly what we've been talking about, right? We talked about the dash for trash, and when we say trash, Carvana is right up there with the best of the trash, or the worst of the trash, depending on how you want to view it. John, they got 90% short interest. We talked about that. We talked about how those short squeezes play out, and as people were doing this dash for trash, this is one of the names. Throw in Peloton, another one of those names. Do we have some call buying in Peloton? Absolutely. We had call buying as recently as yesterday in Peloton. Twice it hit. That thing is ripping to the upside. I'm looking at it, John, in January. Peloton was 11, now it's over 17. Carvana was 540, now it's 19 plus. Silvergate's another one. It was 14, now it's 2150. We have had call buying in each and every one of those. And what do we usually say? Well, they're either hedging a short or they're looking for a squeeze. And I think that either way, these are absolute amazing trades that are up there each and every day for you and I to take a look at and say, you know what? I think I got to do that one. I was in Peloton, as critical as I am about that stock being a piece of crap, and I still think it is. It got the squeeze and I got out. And that squeeze happened today. I was in it yesterday. I'm now out. I'm okay with that. But anytime you've got those huge short interests, John, these are the types of things that can happen in a hurry.
Yep. And they did happen in a hurry, Pete. Carvana, like that. I mean, it's up 28% today. It's back up to a market cap of over $3 billion. But you know how much money they make, Pete? Do you know how much money they lose? Maybe I should say.
Yeah, that's great.
So this is one of those, folks, where my money is out. I bet Pete's money is out.
Yeah.
Vroom, 17% jump today, but that's a $1 stock. So that dash for trash could continue, because for some reason people look at percentages when it's down there that cheap, and they don't make the same impact as if you move the decimal place, one over, because Carvana's 17, the other one's $1.48. If it was $14, people'd be saying, yeah, maybe I should be getting out. But at $1.48, they're probably figuring they should stay in. I would cash both of those checks. All
Mhm.
right.
Mhm.
Dollar Tree, Pete, DLTR, $156 a share. They buy 9,000 of the March 155 calls. The reason I said March is because that's 2 months or almost 2 months into the future. This is the first week of February. These options will expire the third week of March. So you have a lot more time. Many of the trades Pete and I have brought you recently are very short term, and there's a reason for that. The big fast money, smart money was trading ahead of earnings. And in the case of Dollar Tree, earnings are the 1st of March. So this is also a trade ahead of earnings. They bought the 155s, which are this much in the money, Pete, because the stock was 156 or so. So they were just in the money. I like the trade. You got more time to see another continuation of the move. And if you see that, I am going to slam a bunch of calls into it and hopefully be long this thing for almost nothing if I get that.
Love the strategy, John. I got one that everybody in the world talks about every single day. It used to always be Apple, right? No longer. It's Tesla. And every day we talk about it, every day we should talk about it, especially those of us in the options world, because John, the options volumes are absolutely out of control. I mean, January, we set records, and now we already started into February. We're still seeing numbers that are just extraordinary, especially out of Tesla alone, not just the whole market. I'm talking Tesla, who's traded sometimes over 7 million contracts in a single day. Today, early on, we had some big buyers. Stock was trading right around 190. We had a buyer of 37,000. Now, you were just talking about March. I'm going to go to February on Friday, which is tomorrow. And they are buying in a big way. They bought 37,000 of the 190 calls, right where the stock was. It was 189.70. They were buying the 190s for 250 all the way up to about $5, maybe a little bit more. Well, the stock started to move to the upside almost immediately. It's been shifting around a little bit, but John, this is a stock that is absolutely incredible what it's been able to do. It's been up 41% since January. Can it continue the run? I kind of think so. I think you better be disciplined because these options do expire tomorrow. And I always like to emphasize that because you don't have a whole heck of a lot of time. These either work or they don't. And I'll tell you what, they're already working right now. So consideration about what you want to do, as the day goes on or going into tomorrow, because Tesla is certainly on a big run. I love this one. I did spread it off as well, John.
Well, I think it's always smart to spread it off, Pete. And, you already know what I think of Tesla and Mr. Musk. I think the product is fabulous. People love it. He has shot himself in the foot a little bit with the Twitter purchase, not only because he had to sell some shares of Tesla and help drive it down, but also, some people resent Mr. Musk for basically opening Twitter back up and unrestricting people who had been restricted on Twitter. So that probably hurt sales a little bit. Can't imagine that was more than 1 or 2% of sales, though, Pete. Anyway, love Tesla. All right, let's talk a little bit of sports going into the weekend before the Super Bowl. What do you got, Pete?
Well, it's not necessarily a dead time as far as sports, John, but there's a lot going on, obviously. But there's not a whole lot in the NBA that really excited me. I was looking over at college basketball. We already covered that with Purdue not too terribly long ago. I'm looking at, okay, Brady retires. And we made a big deal about it. So did Twitter. So did the world for all the right reasons. He is the GOAT. He made his decision. Now, does he stick to it? Because he made that decision a year ago and he didn't stick to it. Maybe he does again. Or maybe this time he actually does go away and goes off to Fox for $340 million contract or something like that. Not so bad. Seems like a pretty good deal. But anyway, I'm looking at some of the quarterbacks, John, trying to figure out where does everybody land, because we finally got that domino effect of coaches, right? They boom, 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 started hiring. How about the quarterbacks? All these quarterbacks that are lined up, and some of them, it would make a lot of sense to see where they are going to line up, because that actually will change things about free agency and the draft itself and all of the rest of that. So I'm looking at Derek Carr. I think what makes the most sense is for him to replace Brady right down here in Tampa, Florida, John. I think that after looking over at things, it fits a lot of the categories that he's never had. Do they have a defense here? Yes. Did he ever have a defense in 9 years with the Raiders? No. So this gives him the opportunity to play with a team with a defense, and they got plenty of talent on the outside for him to throw the ball to, hand the ball to, and all the rest of it. Tannehill, I think he stays with the Titans. Garoppolo, I think he goes to the Las Vegas Raiders. And the reason I say that is when you look at Josh McDaniels in that offense that they ran at New England, where was it Garoppolo used to be when he was behind Brady? Well, that was New England. Then he went to San Francisco, and just yesterday they were talking about he ain't going to be here in San Francisco. And that was John Lynch talking. I mean, So the GM is going to say stuff like that. It's a good chance that we're not going to see Garoppolo there. Where does he go? I think Las Vegas actually really does line up, which puts Rodgers over with the Jets. And then you start getting the college guys through the draft. I think CJ Stroud then goes to Houston. I think Bryce Young goes to the Colts. And I also think Will Levis, who everybody's talking about more and more, John, maybe he stays down south and he goes to Carolina because Carolina's got a pretty decent coach. They don't have a quarterback. Sam Darnold, in my opinion, is not the answer. I'm not sure you can draft the answer yet, but I think this kid's pretty damn good.
Yeah, I would say you're right. Where do you put Geno Smith in here, Pete? Because it might not have been a perfect year, but boy, he certainly had stepped into a spot in Seattle and did pretty darn well. Mm-hmm. Would you think that that's a guy that doesn't have the impediment of the huge contract, at least not right now? And you know, he's a free agent as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep. There are quite a few others out there, John, and I think that's a good call by you. I think Geno stays right where he is. I think he likes where he is. I think he likes the Pete Carroll actually gave him the opportunities that he did after the Russell Wilson trade. And I think there's a lot of reasons why he might want to just stay in Seattle. So I think there are some other free agents out there. There's no doubt across the NFL. I think most of them are probably going to stay where they are, but I do think there are the upper echelon guys. I mean, Derek Carr is a top 6 quarterback, in my opinion. You look at his numbers and a guy who's not played with a defense and what he's been able to put up, I think he deserves somewhere else to play, and some of these other guys as well. Who knows with Aaron Rodgers, though, John? You know, honestly, if he goes off and starts doing stuff with more of this frog venom or whatever the hell, who knows where he ends up? Maybe he walks away too, but maybe that puts him into San Francisco. Maybe that puts him into Vegas. Maybe that there's a lot of different stops, I think, for some of these guys.
Yep, I would agree. And I think next week, Pete, we should cover prop bets into the Super Bowl because, there are so many of these crazy prop bets, which if you've never done it, folks, it's the sort of thing like when my Bears were in the Super Bowl, I was not on the team. But when my Bears were in the Super Bowl, they had, for instance, is William Refrigerator Perry going to score a touchdown? They have everything from the coin flip to individual player bets like the one I just described. I think Pete and I should cover some of those next week, Pete, because they're both funny and I think there might be an inside bet on some of these. So I'm just throwing it out there to you.
I like it. I like it a lot, John. I think you're right. I think some of these prop bets are more fun than just saying who's going to win or lose or whatever. I think there's a lot of those prop bets that make a lot of sense. Next, we're going to go to the draft. And John, right now the Senior Bowl is going on. And it's a great time for the NFL to look at some of these players, some of the all-star type players, get together, play in some of these bowl games, and they get a chance to analyze exactly what they look like up close. They get a little bit more personal. They're not just watching film and sitting with a guy in the locker room. Now they're actually out on the field and watching these guys move around. I got 2 players that I think are absolute sleepers. And they shouldn't be, guys. They should be a lot higher up than what they, at least right now, are looking like, John. But we'll see how it all plays out. And I'll give you the first one, a guy named Jack Campbell. Most of the country's never heard of him. He's a 6'5", 250-pound linebacker from Iowa who had one of the best defenses in the country the entire year. The guy's a freak show. He's the Butkus Award winner. And yet somehow this guy is only looked at as maybe a 2nd or 3rd round guy. I can't figure it out. I'll tell you what, Jermaine Edmonds is the best comparison. He's number 49 for the Buffalo Bills. If you're ever watching them play, look for a really huge linebacker, 6'5", 250. That's exactly Jack Campbell. He's fast. He's athletic. He's got great feet. He's got everything you'd want. And by the way, Tremaine Edmonds, well, he went number 16 in the 1st round. So why isn't Jack Campbell there? I think he should be, and I think he's going to be a name that people will start talking about. And then there's a kid named Riley Moss from Iowa. Now, for stereotypical reasons, John, a lot of people want him to move from cornerback to safety. And we don't have to get into that because I can tell you this. He's fast. He's good. He's a 4-year starter. He's an unbelievable cornerback. And people at the Senior Bowl are starting to look at him going, well, good Lord, how fast is this kid? Well, I can tell you this. He ran a 13.8 in the 110-meter high hurdles. The kid is fast as lightning. He's a 4.3 kind of a guy. I don't think his speed is his problem as far as a cornerback. And I think people down at the Senior Bowl are suddenly looking at him going, we may have to take a look at this kid a little bit harder. 6'1", about 195 pounds. I'll tell you what, John, Iowa had a great defense, and these two guys are some of the keys to why they were so good.
I'll throw a couple out to you, Pete.
Yeah.
You're much deeper on this than I am, but I would say Tyree Wilson, edge rusher from Texas Tech. Now,
Great.
I got to see them play a couple, not in person, but I got to see him play a couple times this year, Pete. And this kid would stand out.
Yep.
6'6", and that's a pro measured 6'6", Pete. I'm willing to bet he's 6'7.5". So he's tall. He's like 275, 280 pounds. He's a senior, so he's a full man already.
Right.
He's not like, I mean, that's no criticism of a young guy coming out as a sophomore, because my next pick is a sophomore. But this guy, Pete, has it all.
Yeah.
And I think, anytime you've got that kind of size and that kind of speed to be the edge rusher, that's somebody you could easily plug into a whole lot of defenses. Second one real quick, Anthony Richardson down at Florida. If you got to see Florida play this year, this guy is 6'4", 6'5", 230, 240 pounds, Pete.
Yeah.
In other words, he can take a beating. Not that he has, but he can take a beating. And basically people bounce off this guy because he's a big, solid guy. And I think that will, be something that teams are looking for, given quarterbacks dropping like flies in San Francisco.
Yeah, he is a big, good quarterback, John. My only hesitation on him, because I got a chance to watch him play quite a bit, he does throw picks, and that always bothers me in college because, if you're throwing too many interceptions in college, the NFL game's a whole lot faster. Those cornerbacks are a whole lot better. And hopefully your receivers are too, but those corners do change a lot in the NFL. And I think he threw 9 interceptions this past year. It's not the worst thing in the world, but you know what? Sometimes that is a kind of a deal breaker for me. I use a great example of that. The backup in Green Bay played at Utah State, and in his final couple of years, I looked at some of those numbers before they drafted him in the first round, by the way. And there's a reason why he's not on the field. There's a reason why Aaron Rodgers is wondering, why did they draft this guy? He threw a lot of picks in college, John, and he has not looked very professional when he has been on the field with Green Bay. So that's my only concern, is the interceptions. But yeah, he's a big, strong, very good quarterback, and he's certainly athletic.
And I'll tell you what, Pete, the other kid in Florida, not at the U, but the other kid at Florida State, that's your front runner for the Heisman right now.
Yeah.
Unless he gets hurt, he's got a great receiver to throw to. They might break records next year, Pete, because they look like a combo, much like Carr looked like when he was at Fresno State.
Yep, for sure.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us, folks. Like I say, next week, we'll bring you prop bets. We'll bring you, of course, more trades like the ones we had. How was that this week, Pete? AMD, Tesla, Peloton, and Meta. Yep. I mean, my God, there are folks that don't get 4 picks like that in a couple years. And we had them all this week. So bang, we will see how Apple's earnings shape up tonight. Make sure you tune in Monday to have us break down those stories, and 3 at 3 every business day, 3 p.m. Have a nice one. See you Monday. Oh, yeah. Wait. Jared told me, Pete, Rebel's Edge Extra tomorrow.
Nice.
Rebel's Edge Extra with John Tobacco. He's going to tell you all about naked short selling and why that MSGM was trading the way it was and how much people had to pay for that short, because a lot of people say, oh, I'm short this, and we know they're not, because they wouldn't pay the price to be shorted. And if you think I'm looking at you, Tim, yes, I am.
All right. Thanks, man.